you all to this evening licensing subcommittee. Before I hand over to members, I would like to take you through the protocols. I know that this has been circulated to you all, but just for clarity, I will take you through them now. Can I ask that you only speak when invited to do so by the chair? If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communication via the chair. Please ensure that your mics are muted when you are not speaking, apart from the chair, who does not need to mute their mic at any stage. And this is to ensure that the meeting is conducted effectively. When speaking, can I kindly request that you are succinct and you do not exceed the allocated time frames. If you're referring to a specific page or picture in a report, please refer to the page number. If you are having any technical difficulties at all, please use the chat function in Google Meet to alert the meeting, or dial in on the phone number and using the PIN provided within. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal questions to the subcommittee. Any persistent disruptive behaviour will result in removal from the meeting. Once all applications, or there's only one this evening, so once the application has been considered, all remaining parties will be asked to log out of the hearing. Please do so promptly so that councillors will have the opportunity to deliberate and make a decision on the application they have heard. A decision will be sent to you within 5 working days of this meeting. However, should you wish to be informed of the decision sooner, you can contact the licensing service, who will be able to present you with a skeleton decision of what members have decided. Okay, at this point, I would like to hand over to members and invite them to elect a chair.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patrick. Welcome everyone to this licensing hearing, Thursday, 25th of June, 2020. You will notice, I don't know if you've got, if everyone's got the agenda in front of them. I presume you do. It's on page 1 of the document, so it's after the first page of the cover sheet. So we'll go to agenda item number 2. Any apologies for absence? Yes, I think there is. Councillor Conway, who couldn't make it. So Councillor Patrick and myself will be doing this hearing. Agenda item 3 is declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest?
I don't have any, Chair.
Thank you very much. And item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. Can we agree the minutes of the previous meeting, please? I'm happy with them.
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 5. This is the hearing procedure, which I'll just outline very briefly. We've elected the chair. Step 2 is the licensing officer will outline the report. Step 3, the applicant will present their case in support of their application. Any responsible authorities can highlight their reasons. There are none this evening because they've all withdrawn. Step 5, the chair will invite other persons to speak. Step 6 is a discussion. Step 7 is closing remarks. Step 8, final clarification. And then that should be the end of the meeting. So if we could move swiftly on to item 6 of the agenda, and I'd like to invite the Principal Licensing Officer, Mike Smith, to outline the report, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is an application for a new premises licence. Since the application was submitted, regulated entertainment has been removed and the hours for licensable activity have been reduced, so that licensable activity will cease at 11 PM Monday to Thursday, midnight on Friday to Saturday, and 10:30 on a Sunday. Apart from the conditions detailed in the report, it has also been agreed that capacity will be limited to 40 plus staff, and that there will be no private hire for the venue. As a result of these amendments, responsible authorities have withdrawn their objections. There remain objections from local residents. Thank you, Chair. Nothing further to add at this stage.
Yep, thank you very much. And now can we move on to the applicant, please? Or the applicant's representative, whatever.
Sorry, Chair, can I just clarify? It's not the applicant next. It's we've agreed that we have one of the local residents.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Who needs to leave fairly promptly.
Yep,
So
thank
we
you for
could have.
reminding me.
I think it's local resident A.
Thank
Is
you
it?
for reminding me.
Yes.
Yeah,
and then
thank you. And
Sorry,
can you hear okay? Can you
Sorry,
hear?
Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah, you can hear?
Before-
Okay,
Sorry, I've got a question. So before we hear from the applicant,
yeah,
I
sure.
just wanted to double check the opening hours of the premises. Are they being reduced? I know the supply of alcohol has been reduced to 11. Are the opening hours of the premises still past midnight, or has that been gone back to 11 as well, and 12 at the weekends?
Chair, as far as I'm aware, the opening hours
Sorry.
changed.
sorry, Mike, we didn't hear you.
Yeah,
Mike,
sorry.
we didn't hear you.
The hours for regulated entertainment have been reduced. I'm not certain really what position is on the opening hours. Perhaps the applicant can talk on that issue. No.
Yes, when they come to speak, but we just need to hear from resident A first.
Right, I just wanted to clarify what we were talking about before the residents vote, that's all. So she was clear as well what we were talking about.
Okay, great. So
Could you clarify with resident A that she understood all of that?
Actually, it's not great reception, so if you could just sum it up, that would be appreciated.
Well, just to clarify to everyone, resident A, we're allowing her to speak because there's an emergency that she's got at home. So we're allowing her to speak now, if that's okay with everyone. So resident A, go ahead, please.
Well, I don't think it's clear. I think that's what she's saying. It wasn't clear what the amendment was. I don't know if that's
Yes, that's correct. Yes. Could
Yeah.
Mike summarise again quickly? Mike, would you be able to?
Yeah.
So the hours for licensable activity are now will cease now at 11 p.m. on Monday to Thursday, midnight on a Friday to Saturday, and at 10:30 on a Sunday. That's licensable activity. The opening hours, I think, do actually need to be clarified.
Yeah, so that was a helpful interjection by the person who spoke.
Councillor
Thank you very
Patrick.
much.
Councillor Patrick.
Councillor Patrick, thank you so much, Councillor Patrick, because
That's all right.
yeah, I think that kind of murkiness is obviously really, really important to nail down. So what I would say as a local resident is that midnight is never midnight for a start. So it is guaranteed to go on later, and that's just from the premises. Because obviously there's, it takes time, there's rubbish is thrown out. So that leads directly to one of the other problems, which is disposal of rubbish attracts rats. There have been, and it's a matter of record, the very high number of rat infestations, and we're talking really severe infestations in the alley that runs down very close to the premises that have applied for the licence. So that is one really, really basic problem. In terms of noise and noise that carries, I'm a local resident who lives on one street south of the premises, so it may be thought that it won't affect the street. But the noise is such that it bounces off the buildings on Crossways and actually magnifies. So sound will come onto the street to the south even louder. So it won't take very much sound to really cause major ASB to residents on the street south of the premises. So that's the second point. A third point is that one of the other really massive problems is what happens when people who have been at the premises are dispersing. And there is literally nothing that can be done about that by the premises. No promise is going to do anything for the fact that people will come out, they will buy additional drink, and they look for places to continue to drink that is basically residents' doorsteps. You get and obviously I'm mindful of the fact that this is being live streamed public, so I'll keep my language, I'll be careful with my words, but you get fairly disgusting behaviour as a result of this. So people coming out of premises such as this kind of essentially want more booze. They're already a bit wired, probably drugs as well. And then all of this comes literally onto residents' doorsteps. I am aware that this is just outside the spa, but I just think it is so close to the spa that it would be, you know, I think the fact that there's a spa is an indication of just how much trouble there is for local residents, and this premises would absolutely add to it. And that's my statement.
Okay, thank you very much, Resident A, for that. So folks, let's move back, having heard that, to the applicant now, please.
Hello. Right, so.
Sorry, before Mr. Atkin comes in, which normally we get told whose statements whose, so Resident A, which is their statement, because they're all anonymised.
Yes, Resident A has just made their statement.
Yes, I know that. I'm looking for it in the pack, though.
Yes, I know. Councillor Patrick, I think we may need to refer to that later because
okay.
It's anonymised.
Yes, I know that. Okay.
I'm talking about as they speak in the meeting.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike.
I think it's C16.
Right, Chair, are you happy to proceed on? Do you want to thank Resident A for attending?
Yep, thank you, Resident A, for attending. Let's move on then to...
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Smashing. Okay, so the venue is currently a Turkish social club. It's been in operation for the last 20 years, and it's both owned and operated by the Akin family. The applicant, Mr. Engin Akin, wishes to add the offer of alcohol and hot food to the operation. His target clientele will remain the same, and that being the older generation of the Turkish community. And whilst he acknowledges that he is close to the hustle and bustle of Dalston, he does not wish to attract the Dalston crowd. He does not anticipate attracting passing foot traffic because of the location of the venue. The venue itself consists of a small bar stroke serving area, several tables and chairs, TVs and pool tables. The pool tables will remain, as this diversifies the offer away from the standard Dalston vertical drinking establishments. The venue will offer hot and cold food, comprising of Turkish snacks and sandwiches plus toasties. These will always be available when the venue is operating. Just on that note, very quickly to clarify, opening times the venue will close half an hour past the end of licensable activity, just for clarification.
Okay, thank you.
There will be no regulated entertainment, as has already been mentioned. This has been removed from the application, but there will be background music, and this will be incidental and at a level that will allow face-to-face conversations to continue within the venue, as is the case at the moment and for the last 20 years. The venue will not be used for any form of private hire, and a condition with the police has been added to the extensive list of conditions in your bundle. And this condition states, there will be no private hire facility for the venue, including birthday parties, weddings, etc. The venue will only operate under the strict control of the premises licence holder in accordance with the conditions placed on the licence. You're also now aware that the hours of operation have been reduced to come into line with the borough licensing policy, and as a consequence of this, the police and LBH licensing have both withdrawn their representations. One area of the application where I was not clear was around the specific area being used for licensable activity. I apologise for this omission. To be clear, the application relates solely to the first floor area of the car wash building. And you'll be able to see that on page 67, 68 and 69 of your bundle, which are the floor layouts and the actual building itself. For clarity, as I know that some of the residents may have been concerned that the application included the ground floor area outside of the car wash. This is not the case. The ground floor area will only be used for a smoking area which is subject to the limits that have been laid out in the policies relating to dispersal, smoking and outside areas. Mr. Engen-Akin is a personal licence holder, and he or another personal licence holder will be on duty from 9 p.m. during the hours of operation. That's every day. He was previously had extensive training from a licensing barrister, and this training will continue for both staff and Mr. Akin as per the suggested condition 18 of the operating schedule. He continues to successfully operate other venues in the far more challenging area of the Dalston Strip. Mr. Akin's number will be on display at the venue in a clear area for any concerned members of the public to call during the hours of operation, should the need arise. I'm confident that the policies and conditions in place, should this application be successful, will enable him to operate in a manner that does not undermine the licensing objectives, nor add to crime and disorder or negative cumulative impact in the area. Chair, I'm aware of the concerns raised by the members of the public. I believe this was in the region of 25, but has been reduced to 4. I'm not going to address those concerns in the opening statement, and with your permission, I will address them as and when they come up to notice. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. And could we now move on to resident B, please?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to comment on the withdrawal of the responsible authorities' representations. If I thought the applicant would actually comply with the conditions of a license and do all the things that his agent proposes that he would do, then I would do the same. Perhaps the licensing committee could consider their responsibilities, that's the responsible authorities' responsibilities, and the appropriateness of their response in the circumstances. The applicant says he wants to give the customers what they want. This premises, as the applicant's representative has pointed out, has been operating without an alcohol license for many, many years indeed. In fact, before the current Licensing Act came into force. I don't believe the applicant wants to cater for the same customers his father catered to on this site. The track record of the applicant and the other details of the proposal suggests that he plans to cater for younger customers. Mr. Chairman, you may well have been shocked to read about the record of the applicant. The last time the applicant applied for a premises license, the applicant's agent knew all about the applicant's involvement with Efes Snooker Club, but he failed to tell the subcommittee. Granting that license led to the magistrate's ruling of DJ Hamilton. I don't have much to add to what the magistrate said about the applicant's involvement at Efes Snooker Club and the White House Public House, but it is a sobering read. I will say that living in close proximity to Efes Snooker Club under the applicant's management was a nightmare, and I noticed that he seems to be now in control of a premises directly opposite my home, which he seems to have acquired during the lockdown. And I have no doubt he will cause me significant nuisance in the future. I think the applicant knows full well that undermining the licensing objectives is a lucrative activity, and I doubt he has the ability to curb his instincts. I don't take any comfort from the applicant's reassurance condition or any mention of training. Mr. Chairman, it gives me no pleasure to call out the applicant's conduct, but I urge you to reject the applicant's unreliable evidence. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And could we now move on to Mr. Glenn Forbes, please?
Hi, Councillor. Hi, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can Mr. Izzo mute his mic, please?
How would I do that?
Don't know, but we're getting a lot of feedback from it. That's the problem.
If you press star, I think if you press *6, it should mute your line. Okay, I think that's worked.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll proceed. I'd like to echo a lot of the points made by resident B there. I note that in the application, the applicant claimed to be proud of the area and that he will aim to keep it clean and attractive. I don't take this particular point very seriously, that the building is something of an eyesore. It's very ugly. It's a corrugated building. The roofing has several pieces missing. It's falling apart and it's in a dilapidated condition. I've also seen staff at the car wash sweeping litter into the street to remove it from their premises and taking the point of view that, you know, it is not on our property, it's not our problem. And this pledge that I refer to is part of the dispersal policy on page 61 of the licensing subcommittee document. Mm-hmm. The building is poorly insulated. It's got single glazed windows, which is insufficient to contain noise. I also think it's important to note and echo some of the calls that resident B made, that if this license is granted, it's all well and good the applicant's consultant making all of these promises and pledges and commitments to abiding by and fulfilling the objectives of the four objectives of to promote for licensing. But in reality, if granted, it's very difficult to control or regulate this. It will be very difficult he says that it will only be a background noise, but you know, it's very difficult to regulate that and control that once he has the license and will be able to play music at whatever level possible. There is also no suitable smoking area for the premises. The outdoor area is, in fact, a car wash that operates very irregular hours, not to say late in the night, but as in, like, they don't seem to have any set hours. My residence is directly opposite, and I do actually, in fact, I have videographic evidence which I'd be happy to share with the councillors. I didn't have time to send it ahead, but I have videographic evidence of smoking currently occurring inside the social club, which I believe is illegal under current laws, and that private social clubs are defined to have no smoking inside. All of these things demonstrate a flagrant disregard that the applicant has for the law, and the likely attitude that they will have towards conditions and promises that have been made in this application. It's already well documented that there's a lot of crime and disturbances associated with the Dalston Special Policy Area, and with this premises being outside of that policy area, it would widen the scope of the area in which these nuisances occur, make it more difficult for the police to regulate. In fact, if anything, it would be further hidden away from the police and not, you know, out of sight, out of mind almost, which would make it much easier for any illicit activities to be carried out. I also, on a side note, I think it is important to highlight to the council, to the subcommittee, that the notice required to be publicly displayed on the premises was only displayed from the 22nd of May, and I think it should have been displayed from the 3rd or 4th of May. And as I say, my residence directly overlooks this property, and I can be sure that it wasn't there before. And I think if you go through the licensing subcommittee documents, you can also see that residents' objections only started to be delivered to the council from the 22nd of May. And so there's a big 2 or 3 week period there from which there would have been a lot of objections missed. Some people will have, due to the COVID lockdown conditions, a lot of people will have left the area entirely. Some people would have been staying out of London in country homes or out with parents and may not even be aware of being able to see this document if they'd moved out after that time or before that 22nd of May. I also, sorry, I'm just going through my notes here. Within the licensing subcommittee document, there are over 175 pages of complaints, witness statements, police reports, council reports of run-ins with this applicant, which is alluding to the representations that the previous applicant that Resident B was making. There's a long history of problems that the police and the authorities faced with this applicant at the FE's snooker club. I'll move on to summarise now because I'm probably approaching the limit of my time. But to summarise, I think the location of the premises outside of the Dalston Special Policy Area will not enable the prevention of crime and disorder. It should also be noted the previous instances, as I've mentioned, that will be highlighted by myself, and it's there for everybody to see within the subcommittee licensing pack. If this license is granted, it would not be possible to prevent the nuisance as a result of the activities being conducted there. It's not feasible to be able to monitor and regulate that and monitor it to the extent of the promises outlined in the application. And for all of these reasons, I strongly urge you to consider that this application would not be in line with the council's for licensing objectives. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I forgot to say, by the way, that you've got 5 minutes for each of these statements. And can we move on next now to Katie Shamash, please?
Yes, thanks very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thanks very much for having me. I just want to echo some of the objections of the previous residents. I'm concerned about extending licensing off of Kingsland High Street and onto Crossway. My block is on a very quiet cul-de-sac right opposite the car wash. We already have had lots of problems with crime and disruptive behavior, including people stealing bikes from inside our flat bike store. I've been mugged inside the block. We've had people stealing parcels. We also have drunk passersby coming by to use our street, which is kind of quiet and outside of public view as a toilet. We're lucky about the latter point that this doesn't happen very often, but I am concerned that having a licensed establishment right opposite our premises will increase crime on our block. I am also concerned about the amount of noise and disruption that this could lead to. Honestly, the Turkish Social Club, which is currently there, hasn't caused any issues. I don't see any problem with the proposal as it stands, but I am really concerned about the precedent of extending licensing to that area and the fact that it could potentially negatively impact us in the future if the plans were to change. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, everybody, for that. Just wondering if anybody has any points of clarification they would like to bring up at this stage before we enter the discussion. Any points of clarification? I have one myself. I'm just waiting to see if anybody else has any points of clarification. Yeah, this is to Mike, licensing officer. Just in regards, Mike, to the notice, can you just talk us through when the notice went up, as far as you're aware?
Chair, I haven't any knowledge of when the notice was displayed on the premises. Normally we would inspect the site and check that it has been displayed correctly. I'm afraid we were unable to do so on this occasion. We are, however, satisfied that a number of residents have seen and are aware of the application. So I think, generally speaking, sufficient people have been made aware of it to be able to put forward representations, and so you are, I think, probably aware of the issues that are around the application.
Thank you very much. Any other point of clarification anybody else would like to make?
Another point.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, sorry. The applicant's agent suggested that there were now only 4 objections to the application. We have 4 speakers, but none of the representations were actually withdrawn from local residents. So there are still actually technically 25 people objecting to the application.
Okay, that's important. Thank you very much.
Mr. Smith, I just wanted to clarify. Do you automatically put a copy of the application on the council's website? Yes, we can't hear you. Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, yes, it does go on the council website.
So therefore, it is in the public arena for most people to see.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. I'll just give one last opportunity.
Sorry, Chair. I wanted to ask, just in case any of the residents have to leave early or anything, to just ask, would you be able to establish from the local residents what their view is about the responsible authorities withdrawing and how serious they take the application, given that the what are their views now that the hours are reduced, basically. So
okay, well, we could maybe do that in the discussion phase. Yeah. So just one more opportunity for point of clarification, just very quickly. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on now to the discussion, which is just a generalised kind of discussion. Councillor Patrick.
Chair, I suppose the points raised by the applicants of, by the objectors of the applicant's previous behaviour when he's been running licensed establishments. I don't know what licensed establishment he's running at the moment, but looking at the papers from EFIS and the White House and all the paperwork, it doesn't look like they were. We know they weren't run very well, and obviously he talks about being on the premises and making sure it's run well. Well, how can we believe that that's going to happen when we have this paperwork that shows that premises that he's run in the past have been subject to serious reviews by other local authorities and also ourselves? We have 25 objections from local residents, and we need to take those seriously, and we need to hear that from the applicant that why he's changed, if he has changed, and how he's going to run this place. As it's been said, this place has been running for a long while as a social club with no alcohol licence, so why an alcohol licence now?
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Would you like to respond to that, either Mr. Atkin or Mr. Forbes? Or, sorry, Mr. Hicks, rather.
Mr. Hicks, yes, Chair, I'd love to respond to that. And that was probably going to be the first point that I actually wanted to cover in all of this. It's the elephant in the room, in a way. So we've heard from, I can't remember which resident it was, that suggested that we've tried to hide the fact that FES was reviewed. The first point I want to make from that is it was 2013. So it was behaviour back in 2012, 2013, 7 or 8 years ago. That's the first thing I'd like to say. I'd like to underline the fact that there are quite a few licensees on the borough who have been through the review process themselves, who've had their licences revoked, etc., and they still go on to operate successful licensed premises. If we look at from 2013 onwards, when FES was operating under the basis of an appeal, and its eventual licence that remained within the premises, there weren't any complaints. The police didn't have a need to take any further action. So technically, from the time when this went on to the time when the premises eventually closed and became earth, the police didn't intervene at all. No responsible authority intervened with any of the actions taken by Mr. Engin Akin, and that was running a licence that was until 1:30 in the morning. Probably one of the main reasons is because his father wasn't involved, and his father was fairly problematic. And I speak from experience because I was the officer originally who put in the review papers in 2013 to review the premises. And we're not trying to cover up that fact. Engin and his father will both admit they made some fairly monumental mistakes. But going forward, Engin has continued to operate premises, FES being one, Burger and Bun being the other, and he's got another restaurant and this social club without incident, without any problems. And I feel that really they should be put to bed, the review side of things. I understand why the public have looked at those notes and become very, very concerned about the person sitting in front of them today asking for an alcohol licence. But it was a long time ago. And as I said to you earlier, plenty of other licensees get in trouble, they have problems, but then they go on to successfully run a business. And hopefully that answers your concerns in that respect, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patrick, satisfied with that answer?
Sorry, about satisfied. I've heard what Mr. Hicks says, and it's interesting that of licensing officers, I don't know if they can confirm that there hasn't been any action against Mr. Akin since. I don't know if the Burger and I don't know our clubs, or if the Burger and the Bun, and whatever I think he was called, is in Hackney.
Yes, so that's in the Dawson Strip. That venue's in the Dawson Strip.
Thank you. Just names of the clubs down there, and pubs change so frequently.
Sorry, I struggle to pronounce the name of his restaurant there. He might want to help me out, but there's a restaurant in the same area, just down from the Bun and Bar that he ran. And in answer to your question in relation to, there's no public authorities here, responsible authorities here to ask. The police aren't here, and licensing aren't here. You can't ask them.
No.
One of the reasons I suggest they're not here is because there hasn't been any complaints. They've got nothing to speak about. We've answered their concerns by reducing hours, conditions, etc., and they haven't got any concerns because there are none to speak about, Chair.
Okay, great. Any of the other persons would like to chip in to the discussion here?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Resident B would.
Yep, go ahead.
Well, firstly, on the issue of the notice, the issue isn't whether or not residents have seen it. The issue is, did the applicant display the notice in accordance with the statutory provisions? And you have a witness that says, no, he didn't. The applicant's agent, to just correct what the applicant's agent say, what I said about the applicant's agent was that the last time the applicant applied for a premises license, the applicant's agent knew all about the applicant's involvement with FS Snooker Club, but he failed to tell the subcommittee. And that's when he was working as a licensing officer for the Metropolitan Police. As for this all being in the past, well, yes, that was in the past. So I can say that Burger and Bun is a restaurant, or was a restaurant, it's now closed, that did cause a lot of nuisance on Thames, and complaints were definitely made. That very loud noise, music noise coming from there. Mr. Chairman, ordinarily this would sail through the concessions that the applicant has made, the efforts that Guy Hicks has put into providing you with the paperwork which would ordinarily satisfy the licensing committee, and you would give the applicant the benefit of the doubt. The problem is the applicant's character. The details you have are in the past, yes, but the applicant remains the same. He's the same applicant. Nothing's changed about him. And what confidence can we have in an applicant who has been found out by a magistrate in the fashion that he was? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can make some more points, but I think that covers it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other persons would like to take part in this discussion at all? Mr. Forbes?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I would just like to address the points made by Mr. Hicks there as well. That yes, okay, this very well may a lot of it have been in the past, but there is within the licensing subcommittee pack, there is 175 pages of complaints, witness statements, police reports, and council reports in there of the run-ins that Mr. Akin had run-ins with the police and all of the authorities I mentioned there, of complaints, 175 pages, which is quite substantial. He may say that there haven't been any complaints since, and happy to be corrected if I'm wrong, but I'm not aware of what licensed premises the applicant is making now. I think that Resident B just made the point that yes, the Burger and Bun restaurant was being run. That we don't have any evidence of any complaints here in front of us, but running a burger restaurant with or without complaints is very different to running a licensed establishment, which has much more scope for a much wider scope for public nuisance and crime and disorder to occur. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Shamash, any comments?
No, no comments from me. I'll just echo the points of the other two residents.
Chair, I don't know if it's worth asking Mr. Hicks about whether or not the applicant tried to resolve any of the complaints and issues made by the residents. you know, what attempts were made to try and deal with that, because there are 25 residents, so in addition to that paperwork, but there are 25 complaints or 25.
Yeah.
If you want to
Did you hear that, Mr. Hicks?
Yeah, I did. I mean, there are 25 representations against the license, and we've dealt with that with initially the submission of a large number of conditions. Some of those conditions would suit a nightclub, not a small bar, but a nightclub. The dispersal policy is often written pretty much along those lines for nightclubs. You know, they're all quite stringent, strict conditions and policies. With regards to Glenn Forbes's comments there about 170 pages, the reason is because somebody has put the review bundles in there. If you look through the dates of those, they will all refer back to incidents that were 2012, 2013. If he can find me one that's post 2013, I will stand corrected. And again, I would reiterate, police aren't here. The council aren't here. There clearly were no issues. Noise aren't here. There were no noise complaints. And the noise complaint that Resident B mentions, and I would seek clarity from Mr. Aiken here, but I believe that one of those noise complaints, the EHO did actually turn up, and Burger and Bun, which incidentally is a licensed premises, it does sell alcohol, was shut. And Mr. Aiken produced a video that clearly showed another premises responsible for all that noise. And one other final point I'd like to make, and I just would seek a bit of clarity from Resident B again, is that he seems to be suggesting that I was the agent representing Mr. Aiken previously. I'm not. I retired in August, and I think that needs to be clarified amongst you, because I'm uncomfortable with the way Resident B is suggesting that I've been previously involved, and I haven't. This is the first time I've represented Mr. Aiken in a subcommittee. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Patrick, I mean, I have a few questions myself, but obviously, if you've got any.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I'll let you. Sorry. I was wondering. At the moment, the applicant is for 40 people. There's seating for 20. That seems to me that if we granted the applicant application as it stands with 40 people, even take after lockdown, 40 people in that space seems quite a lot, and that seems to me that would encourage vertical drinking. We've been told by the applicant and in the application that this is a social club for Turkish elders. At the moment, doesn't have a license, but they want to be able to have a drink. Okay, I think we need to look at the number of people that the license is for. And reduce it so that we don't get vertical drink. There isn't any vertical drinking that takes place.
Okay, can we just confirm, just in reference to the map, because now we're talking about the size of the space and stuff. On the map, which is page 49, I think, of the bundle, we can see a number of tables in the map, and we can see one pool table. You mentioned that there might be more than one earlier on. So 5 times 4 is 20 sitting around the table. So we'd just like to explore really, what's in there apart from what's represented on the plan, and how big actually is that space, because there's no dimensions on the map. Could you clarify that, please, Mr. Hicks?
Yeah, I'd have to look at Mr. Aiken, but I'm pretty sure his intentions were to add an additional pool table or 2 in there. You'll also notice that there's some fruit machines at the back which offer seating for 3. And remember, this is a maximum capacity of 40. It doesn't mean to say that it's always going to operate at 40. There will be times when the football's on the telly and they will want to come and watch football. And maybe it will operate at its capacity of 40, during those times. But it's certainly not anticipated that it will constantly operate at that capacity 7 days a week. It's merely a maximum. But if it offers any comfort, and I'm looking at Mr. Aiken, who's off camera at the moment, but I'm looking at him for a nod and approval to say that if it gives the committee comfort, then we'll put some more tables in. And I think that was a nod.
Councillor Patrick, how do you feel about that?
You can put some more tables in, but I'm still concerned. I don't know the size of the room, and even with COVID, even with the going down to 1 metre, hopefully the regulations as a COVID officer won't always be enforced, we hope.
Could we,
Chair,
but,
sorry, I'm happy to talk about COVID. I mean, again, there's no representation from public health. COVID was something that was discussed by Kerry Ryan on her representation, but I'm more than happy to talk about that. At the end of the day, with regards to COVID, we'll operate at 50% of the capacity should this license be granted. So that will be 20 people plus staff. We'll ensure that there are alcohol gels available for staff and customers all around the venue. Staff will be encouraged to wear gloves and face masks, and we'll follow any guidance that is set by the government. I think that's not long been issued over the last few days, if that helps.
it would help if we knew the size of the space. That would help us a lot. I don't know if you could ask Mr. Aiken if he has a rough dimensions.
If you give me 30 seconds, I've got the plan here, and I've got an architect's ruler. I'll tell you exactly how big it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi there. Sorry, I'm not sure how open this discussion is, if I'm allowed to interject here or not.
Yeah, quickly, go on.
But yeah, just with regards to the social distancing, I mean, the car wash has been operating since the day lockdown was lifted, and there's been no social distancing occurring there. They've been sharing lighters and cigarettes with each other and with customers. I mean, obviously you can't do that much about the customers, but there's not even an attempt to socially distance amongst themselves. And I just think that's important to note as well, that there's a disregard for those rules too.
Okay.
Chair, can I dive in there, please?
Yeah, go on.
In the interest of fairness, we're talking about an application for a licensed premises. We're not talking about the car wash. There seems to be a bit of, let's throw as much mud as we possibly can and hope that some of it sticks. The car wash and what the car wash employees do is irrelevant. It's nothing to do with the licensed premises.
Yeah, thank you for that. Did you find this side of the room?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, my apologies. I got drawn into that. So it's 13 metres by 8.5 metres.
Chair, would it be possible for Mr. Hicks to clarify how many members of staff again?
How many members of staff, Mr. Hicks?
Yeah, so Mr. Aitken will be there as a manager. There'll be one bar staff, and on the days when, if you look at the SIA condition, it's on a risk assessment basis. So when he risk assesses and believes I've got the football on, I need an SIA, there'll be an SIA on duty, so 3. I'm looking at Mr. Aitken. Can you join in and just clarify that is correct? Engin, can you hear this?
Yes, I can. That's great. That's right. Can you hear me?
Three in total. Three in total?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And how open are you to the idea of dropping the capacity to, say, 25?
I think Mr. Aitken would have to answer that. I would suggest that dropping it by a considerable percentage would affect his business going forward. But he needs to answer that, I'm afraid.
Mr. Aitken, would you like to respond to that question, please? Thank you.
Hello, sir. Well, sir, the capacity we set 40 people. As Mr. Guy said, the 40 will be the maximum, and that will be every day. But if I do reduce the capacity, and if I have a free staff there, it will be I don't know. We can consider dropping the capacity a bit more down.
Yes.
But I don't know what I can't drop it to maybe I don't know. If I drop it too low, it'd be hard for me to run the place. To be honest.
Yeah. So what's a good number for you?
Well, if I want to, can we say 30 for now?
Councillor Patrick, how do you feel about that?
And Mr. Aitken will put tables in to accommodate 30 people because I'm worried about virtual drinking.
Okay, so that would be
virtual drinking, not virtual. I've only reduced the virtual drinking.
Basically,
yeah.
Well, Patrick, I'm going to have at the moment. I have a one pool table there, 7 size. Is it like a big pool table? I am planning to put one more pool table beside next to it, and there's going to be tables and chairs. So there is no like a dancing floor, or there is no like a playing area down there. So it's going to be maybe a bit more arcade games football games and quiz games, and there's going to be one more pool table there. So that way, my aim is to make people play more like pool table and the arcade games there.
So how many people? Go on, Councillor Patrick.
Yeah, is that what your clientele want? I mean, I don't know. Obviously, you know your clientele.
It's going to be like probably elder, sometimes in the football games, maybe middle age. But the reason I'm saying pool table, people get to socialize with the pool table. I already have one pool table, and sometimes that is not enough. So I'm pushing to put one more pool table there, and some, arcade games, and there's already tables and chairs, circle tables and chairs in the area.
How many people could you sit in there?
Well, if I make the capacity 30 people, like at the moment, there's about one pool table there, and there's about 5 or 6 tables, round tables.
Yes. How many people can sit round them? How many people can sit round those tables?
4 people. 4 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you need 6 tables then? No. You need 8. How many tables do you need? 6 tables.
But because of there's only 3 meters each. What I can do, if we do drop the capacity, I'll have to give them more space. Maybe put 5 tables, maybe 4 tables there. But I want to put maybe another extra pool table there. Added.
Okay.
But Chair, most of these people around the pool table and the slot machines are all standing, though, aren't they? They're all standing.
Hello?
Chair, can I make a point, Chair?
Yep.
That vertical drinking is people standing at a bar drinking, standing around in large groups. There isn't the room to do that. It's not laid out like that. So yes, there might be somebody standing at a fruit machine. There might be a couple of people standing to play pool, and there might be a couple of people watching them. But the majority of people in there will be sitting down at the tables, and the bar itself isn't big enough to have enough people in there. I mean, it really is quite a small bar. There won't be people standing around there because nobody will be able to get a drink. They'll have to get their drink and move away, and especially with the COVID side of things. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, great. Councillor Patrick, anything else?
Yeah, vertical drinking is vertical drinking. It doesn't have to take place at the bar. People could be standing around the edges of the tables. I think I could live with 30, providing the extra tables. But it does seem to me that, the applicant is trying to change the nature of this place. But we keep hearing it's a social club for elderly Turkish people. Yet we won't hear about more pool tables being put in, more slot machines being put on. I don't know whether that's what his clientele want, but considering the fears of the local residents, it seems to me that that the applicant is changing the nature of the building. It doesn't sound to me like it's okay. I run a social club, and they've asked me to provide. They want to buy a drink while they're sitting around watching the match or chatting. It does sound to me like there's going to be a lot more activity, and that will increase the number of people coming in and the activity, and more late night activity. Well, I know I say late night activity. 11 o'clock's still quite late when people are leaving, and midnight at the weekends.
Yeah.
And residents do have all the what happens in the Dalston strict part. Of course, this premises is only just beyond it.
Yeah, so we need to drill down then really on kind of why now, after 20 years, do you want to supply alcohol?
His customers have asked for it. There's a number of points I think that were made from the residents, and Councillor Fitzpatrick has kindly brought those up as well.
Patrick.
Sorry, Councillor Patrick, I do apologise. I can't see your name because I've got some gump up in front of your face, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
That's all right, Guy, but we've met before.
We have, yes, we have, sorry. So there's some points I want to make. We've heard that the venue is isolated in this street on its own. And we've heard that people are worried about it attracting more crime, etc., etc., etc. We've heard that the applicant won't adhere to the licensing conditions should he be successful, that he'll just ignore those, he'll do what he likes, etc., etc. What I would say to you is that a premises license is far easier to enforce against rather than a premises that's got no license at all. Once he's got that license, there are clear underlying conditions that he has to adhere to. And the police and the authorities have got plenty of powers to deal with those should he not adhere to his license conditions. And he's experienced the rough end of the stick previously when he's been reviewed. He doesn't want to go through that process again. That's not something he wants to revisit. And the other point I would make as an ex-police officer and being experienced in the licensing world is that with regards to someone like Dalston or Shoreditch, it's really, really difficult to target a premises and deal with that premises because they're clustered in amongst lots of other premises. So you go to that venue, let's say the Nest, because it's now shut, I'll use that name, and you go to the Nest and you say, okay, you know, there's been lots of this, that and the other and urination and it's all your fault. They say, no, it's not my fault. It's Alibi over the road. It's down to them. We go to Alibi and Alibi say, no, it's not my fault. It's so-and-so down the road, etc., etc., etc. But he's isolated. He's on his own. It's far easier for certainly the police and the responsible authorities to deal with an isolated premises if all of a sudden crime spikes, rubbish spikes, the urination spikes, all the things we've heard about. And the other point I want to make in relation to John Campbell Road is, and I feel for the residents of John Campbell Road because I know they suffer. But the first point I would make is we still stand by the fact that the target audience for this venue is middle to late age Turkish people. There will be some young people in there. Don't hold me to that because there will be some young people going to the venue, but it's not the people that usually go to bars and clubs in Dalston, which are the problems around John Campbell Road. And the other thing is, if I can draw your attention to, I think it's the map on the final page of your bundle. If you look at the location of where the venue is, you look at the location of John Campbell Road, it makes absolutely no sense for people to leave Engin's venue at 11:30, midnight at weekends, which isn't too late, and then turn left, come out of the venue, turn left again into John Campbell Road. It doesn't make any sense. If they're going to Dalston Strip, they're going to turn right out of his venue, straight up to the junction, and they're there in Dalston. It doesn't make sense that they would visit and walk through John Campbell Road and urinate and all the disgusting things that you've heard, which do happen, but it's not going to be our customers. They're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chair.
If it's okay, I'd like to just explore the number of smokers outside and where the smoking area is exactly. If you could just tell us where that area is going to be, because I know you've offered to restrict it to 10 up until 10 in the evening, I believe. Can you just talk a little bit about the smoking outside, please?
Yeah, of course. So, unfortunately, I haven't got the bundle in front of me. I didn't want to murder too many trees printing out the massive great bundle. So I've literally just got the dispersal policy, which is in your pack. I do apologise. Yeah, so we're going to limit the smoking area from 10 p.m. onwards to 10 people. So prior to that, there could well be 12 if you have a lot of smokers in the venue. But at 10 p.m, it's very, very strict. It's limited to 10 people. Nobody will be allowed to take open drinking vessels into that smoking area, and certainly not away from the smoking area when they're down there.
Yeah, and where exactly is the smoking area, please?
Sorry, I have to look to me. I think there's a small area actually underneath. There's like an overhang on the car wash, but I'd have to look to Mr. Mr. Aiken there for clarity.
That's where the cars would normally be washed, is that
yes. Right? Engin, can you clarify, please?
Yes. If before the entrance, when enter just right on side, just ground from the car wash entrance.
Right, so there'll be 10 people sort of hanging around there, possibly smoking. Potentially.
Yeah, that's maximum.
Potentially, yeah. Okay.
Chair, I'd have to just very quickly interject there and say that obviously if you're going to reduce the capacity, if you're minded to reduce the capacity if you grant the license, then I think in fairness you'd have to reduce the number of smokers.
Yep. Well, we'd be happy to do that. Councillor Patrick?
I agree. Happy to reduce the number of smokers. Let's reduce the number of smokers in the population to 0.
We need a number, Mr. Hicks, for that.
But obviously, well, I think if we're going to reduce it, we reduce it to 8 smokers. And also as reassurance, Mr. Aiken would ensure that there's plenty of signage up and that the staff are reminding people if it gets noisy, he's going to be responsible for monitoring that area, or his staff will be responsible for monitoring that area. again, it's another, I don't want to use the expression stick to beat him with, but technically that's what it is. If the police roll up and, you know, there's 8 smokers out there and they're shouting, screaming and being raucous, they're going to look to him and say, your license says, your policies say, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you dealing with it? So again, the onus is on him to deal with that. And I know that Resident B has said that he'll ignore it. I disagree. I would say that he's learned his lesson from previous court appearances, and he will adhere to his conditions.
Yeah. Councillor Patrick, how do you feel about the number 8?
I think 8's too high. I think it ought to be perhaps 5, considering there's all the residents live around.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that.
Can I just move on to the music?
Yeah.
Do you want me to answer the smoking bit first, or?
Well, let's clear the smoking bit up first, Councillor Patrick, please.
Yeah.
I would suggest that 8 is manageable. You know, I don't want to be obstructive and appear obstructive. If obviously you're of a mind to grant and you're of a mind to grant with the lower smoking figures, that's fine. But I think, you know, a reduction to 8 is fair enough from us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Patrick.
Right, I know that regulated entertainment has been taken out of the application, and I'm sure Mr. Hicks knows what regulated entertainment is, and I'm sure Mr. Aitken does. But I just wanted to check that Mr. Aitken is aware that since he doesn't have, he's not asking for regulated entertainment, that the music can be at no louder level than background noise, and that he's clear and he can say that to the committee so that residents can hear him say that as well. In case we do decide to grant the licence, then residents can hear him make that announcement that any music will be at no louder than background level, because it does worry me that this building is quite not only a small building, but I think I have gone past it and it doesn't look a very substantial building, I think is the word I'm looking for, and there may be noise breakout.
Chair, there's actually a condition on the licence that clearly states, I'll find it for you, but it clearly states that music should be at a background level where face-to-face conversation can still carry out. I'll find the condition for you if you just bear with me.
By the way,
Unless someone wants to jump in.
Patrick, yes, I can confirm that's right. There's going to be no regulated music. It's just going to be background music.
Condition 19.
That.
Yep, got it. So condition 19 reads, any music played in the premises will be maintained at a background level so that face-to-face conversation can be heard. There will be no DJs. Correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Yeah, cool. Okay, we're kind of moving to the end phase of the discussion part now, but I do have a couple of more questions, if that's okay, Councillor Patrick, just to chip in with a few more, about the door supervision. So I'd just like to ask, under the kind of operational risk assessment, when do you think that you would require SIA security people? Bearing in mind that you have said it on page 63, overall staff and SIA will be in place at the exit during dispersal.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, thank you. I was having a little technology problem there for a moment. Forgive me. I would just like to make some references to the points that have been made, if that was okay, before you carry on.
We can do that when we're summing up at the end. Is that okay with you?
If that's okay with you, but well, okay, I'm happy with that. If you'll afford me the time, I don't wish to make a long statement, but I would like to respond to some of the things that have been said.
So I didn't catch that, Councillor Patrick. Can you repeat
Hello?
that, please?
I said the gentleman, I don't know who it is. I can't remember which represent. That's Rep B, is it? Perhaps you can come in after you've made your point.
Yeah, okay.
Resident B. Resident B.
Yeah, Resident B. Okay, so
That's what I thought,
we'll just clarify my question first about the security, and then
Yeah.
Resident B, you can come in, and then we'll go into the sort of final phase. Just on security, Mr. Hicks, could you just talk about the security question?
Yes, of course. So it's another quite onerous condition because it puts a lot of burden on Mr. Aitken. The reason that condition is in there, I don't anticipate, and he doesn't anticipate, ever needing to use it, to be honest, because it's not going to be that sort of premises. But it was put there to give comfort to the police, who obviously it applies to probably the most. And the reason we word it in that way is so that it's for Mr. Aitken to assess his premises, assess his events, and if he feels necessary, then he needs to add some security to that event. If he doesn't, and he decides that I don't need them tonight, I've got 40 in and they're all good, and it basically the wheel comes off and goes wrong, the police are going to be asking him questions. They're going to be looking at that condition and say, why did you assess it in the manner you assessed it? He's going to have some talking to do, and eventually, obviously, if there are other issues with it, it leads to the responsible authorities taking action as they see fit, which could mean a review, which he doesn't want. Hopefully that answers your question, Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Just moving on to resident B now.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things and make a couple of points which have been raised in the discussion.
Yeah.
Firstly, the issue with the applicant is the management style of the applicant, which has been severely lacking over the years. Just to clarify, Burger and Bun was a restaurant. It was closed. It was closed before the lockdown. I believe it has changed hands. I'm not sure about that, but it was definitely closed. When the applicant was running it, which was very recently, within the last year or so, when he first opened up the place, it was an exceptionally loud noise, music noise that was coming out of the premises. I stood outside that premises myself and witnessed it myself. The applicant saw me, he came out, and he was quite threatening. So I just thought I should make that point. The complaints were made. So I don't believe what the applicant's agent has said about that. I also want to point out that if you look at the information about the White House Public House Review, you can see how much of a problem football matches can be in terms of disorder and nuisance from drunken football fans. And also, I would like to just clarify with Guy Hicks what I said previously that he said he was uncomfortable about. I'll just reiterate that the last time the applicant applied for a premises license, the applicant's agent knew all about the applicant's involvement with FA Snooker Club, but he failed to tell the subcommittee about his involvement.
Who is the agent?
That's you, Guy Hicks. And you, Guy Hicks, was representing the Metropolitan Police as its licensing officer at that hearing. So I hope that clarifies the matter for Mr. Hicks about what I said there.
Not in the slightest.
Also, sorry?
No, sorry, you've really lost me. I can't be a licensing agent when I'm a police officer.
No, you were a police officer, and you failed.
You said licensing agent.
No, you were a police officer at the applicant's last application, for the premises license that the applicant made, and at that subcommittee meeting, you failed to tell the subcommittee about his involvement with FA Snooker Club. I hope that clears that up for you. Also, you'll find Mr. Hicks' statement in the bundle about FA Snooker Club at the review by the Metropolitan Police, where he talks about the considerable resources that were required to deal with that particular premises under the management of the applicant. And that's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman, in this phase.
Okay, thank you very much, Resident B. So yeah, I'm happy to move on now to kind of closing remarks. So if we
Chair, can I actually answer what's been sort of?
Go on.
I would just say that the Metropolitan Police has a very robust complaint system, and had Mr. Ezo suggested that I'd lied to a committee, he had every opportunity to make a complaint and have the matter dealt with. And I would suggest that it just wasn't the case. That's why he hasn't made a complaint. And again, in relation to noise from Burger and Bun, there's no EHO here. They haven't raised an issue. I can assure you, if there had been a catalogue of complaints, as has been suggested, they would be sitting there with an objection. They didn't even make an objection.
Well, they never do.
They do.
They do, Miss.
Well,
sorry, I keep
not in
calling you
my
by your name. I
experience.
apologise.
In my experience, they very, very, very rarely. I mean, I can't remember the last time I've seen them turn up at a licensing meeting. They always withdraw the representations, whatever. That's my experience in Dalston over many years. And I've got to say, Mr. Hicks, I've been to more licensing application hearings in Dalston than you have.
Okay, let's move on.
This has now
please.
turned into a personal attack on me, Chair, and I would like you to make a note of that in the notes. That this is now getting a bit personal.
It is.
Not at all.
Let's move on, please.
Not at all, but I think not at all. No personal at all, Mr. Hicks. I'm just pointing out the facts. That's all.
Well,
can we move on now?
I'm going to go back to Resident B said the applicant threatened him, and he made a report. Who did he make a report to? Was it the police? Has he got a CAD number?
No, I didn't make a report about his threats, but I did make a report when he did attack me on another occasion, though, if that's relevant. But
when you say attacked you, he physically
Sorry,
attacked
Chair,
you?
we're bringing in evidence here that he's trying to bring in evidence here that hasn't actually been submitted through the correct due process.
Yeah,
well,
we can hear evidence of the character of the applicant.
That's right.
I mean, we've got all the stuff that's in the bundle about Effis and the White House and what went on there. And we've just heard that the applicant has attacked somebody. So I think it's relevant to hear that it's about the character of the applicant. It may, I'm just asking, has it been reported? Was there a CAD number? If it's been reported and there's a CAD number, then there's something to go on.
Well, the other incident certainly was reported.
Sorry, Pat. Can I talk, please?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Atkin.
If that was the right case, if I threatened him or attacked him, he would have reported, or he would have gone to the police. Nothing happened. He came to my premises, just came, he campaigned again, and went. There's nothing happened like that. But if I want to open the pass, I fixed his windows. I paid thousands of pounds to fix his windows, helping him out. But I don't want to go for the pass. I've done him a lot of favour. He knows about it. But this is the new case, so I don't want to go for the pass. Thank you.
Okay, I think we should move on now, Councillor Patrick, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we move on to the summing up phase, please? So if you'd like to kind of just sum up very briefly, we've got 5 minutes in the round for all of this. For other persons and the applicant, please. If you could just go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, I'm going to have to bullet point it in that case and just underline a few things. There's no police or any other responsible authority here. Evidentially, there's no evidence to suggest that any of the things that have been alleged here, any of the complaints that have been made against Mr. Aiken during this committee are actually factual and correct. Historically, yes, we've got FES. 7 or 8 years ago, a long time. A lot has changed in that time. The man's grown up. Since the review, there's been no issues, and the lack of representation by the responsible authorities bears this out. If there were loads of issues, they would be here now making their representations, irrespective of what Resident B says in his great experience. And again, yes, okay, you can look at the character of Mr. Aiken. Hopefully we've cleared up the issue around FES. And in relation to the attack, again, there are all these avenues. If things are that bad, there's avenues to take complaints out against him. If he was attacked, if Resident B was attacked, why didn't he actually go to the police and make an allegation there? If things are that bad and he knows all these processes, he would know he could make a complaint again. And needless to say, there wasn't a complaint made. There's no CAD number. There's no CRIS reference, crime reference. We're sitting here looking at a blank space where the police would be if there'd been these issues. Chair, I'd like to draw it very briefly back to what we're actually here for. It's for a small premises. we've given you a raft of conditions, quite strict, stringent conditions, powers and policies that Mr. Aiken, should he be successful, has to adhere to. If he doesn't adhere to those, he goes back down that road of review. And I can assure you he doesn't want to go down that road. I don't want my name attached to him going back down that road. I will be assisting him with training so that he doesn't go back down that road. We're talking about a small venue with a very small bar and a small amount of alcohol. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So just for other persons, can I just call on Katie Shamash?
Yes, thank you. I just want to reiterate, I am still concerned about this venue. I am concerned after hearing the proposed application and the proposed changes to the venue that it will be a change of character compared to what was there before. I'm concerned that it will be drawing more people than previously, that those people will be intoxicated. I think Mr. Hicks mentioned that it's very unlikely that those people will turn and go onto John Campbell Road or onto any of the other smaller streets. I live on Chelsea Place, just opposite. I think it's very likely, we've seen it with other bars in the area, and I think it would only be worse given that this venue is off the main road, outside of police presence, just not seen as much. In terms of the fact that by giving the license, we'll have more regulation, we'll be able to ask for review if there are any problems, I would just like to say that I would much prefer we don't have any problems to start with. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Glenn Forbes.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I'd just like to reiterate, I stand by my objections. I certainly don't want to get involved in any sort of slinging match, but I do think that actions speak louder than words, and I have reservations, question marks over the promises and the conditions that have been pledged, and that although I also concerned that the introduction of alcohol into the premises will attract a new type of clientele, a younger clientele. The premises has operated successfully for 20 years or more, I think the consultant said, successfully without alcohol. I don't see why it needs it now if to continue the way it does. I think there'd be a greater desire from a younger clientele, a more disruptive clientele to demand alcohol. I think I'll finish there. Thank you very much.
Can I just ask you one very quick question? As you live opposite, yep. How many people do you see kind of milling around? Generally, at the moment.
At the moment, none. Like I say, I will reiterate the point I said earlier. At the moment, they smoke inside the premises. I know that the application says that windows will be closed at all times. I can see. I know there isn't any conditions at the moment, but all of the windows are open right now, which I assume is because it's hot, and I don't know how how they would mitigate that if they had a license. I don't know how they'd manage to adhere to keeping the windows closed in this sort of heat.
Okay.
But yes, no. Sorry, to answer your original question. Sorry. There's not a great deal of people milling around at the moment. I can't see inside exactly, but I'd estimate there's probably seems to be about 10 or 15 people in the premises most of the time.
Right. Okay. Great. And just moving on to resident B now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Councillor Patrick for your service this evening. There is a lot of evidence about the applicant. The magistrate, District Judge Hamilton, in his judgment about the applicant, said he was a dishonest witness who repeatedly used the tactic of denying responsibility for the poor running of licensed premises with which he had, in fact, had close involvement. The judge's conclusion was that he was dishonest, particularly in relation to the running of licensed premises. Mr. Chairman, I simply request that your panel evaluate carefully that judgment and consider the statutory responsibilities of the licensing authority. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Step 8 is final clarification. So if there's any other final clarifications, and I have one myself, which you haven't actually spoken about yet, and I don't want to open a massive can of worms. So anybody with further points of clarification at this stage?
Muting myself. I've got one, John. I'm curious. not advertising. How is the premises? What is on the premises at the moment to let people know it's there? And is there any proposed change of the signage for the premises after if a license is granted? So I assume at the moment we're told it's a Turkish social club. So I assume that people that go there are either members or all groups of friends. I don't know if there's any signage advertised in the premises at the moment, but I'd be curious to know if there's going to be any changes to the signage afterwards to attract new customers.
There's no signage at the moment. And my suggestion to Mr. Aitken going forward, should he be successful, is that he doesn't change that. He doesn't put any signage up. He doesn't need to. He's got his existing customer base. He doesn't want to change from that. He doesn't need to have a sign up.
Okay, great. So are you happy with that, Councillor Patrick?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. I'd just like to speak about the fire risk. And has any fire risk assessment been done? And are there any fire escapes? And where is the way out?
Sorry, Chairman.
Yep.
There is one on the side road, on the entrance at the side. There's a fire exit there. On the side road, so there is one fire exit already down there. It's been done.
Is that a staircase?
Yes, there's a staircase to the car wash or to the side road.
Yeah. Is it metal? Is it made of metal?
Metal, yes.
Okay.
And onto the car wash or the side road.
And Chair, just for further clarity, again, there's been no representation from the fire service. They actually wrote and said they had no issues.
Thank you for that. Okay. Well, I think we.
Chair, sorry.
Yeah, go on.
Wait, I was thinking about it. It's not declaring an interest, but I think for the public record, I think I ought to put on record that I work for the London Borough of Islington that took the premises review against Mr. Aitken, but I wasn't involved in it in any way.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Patrick.
Somebody thought it ought to be put on public record, but I had nothing to do with. I know the people to do, but nothing to do with me.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. I think we've reached the conclusion of the hearing. So now, if I could ask the applicant and other persons to leave immediately, you'll find out about our decision within 5 working days. I'll just give this very quick opportunity for anybody to come back for 1 second. Otherwise, yeah.
Can I leave now?
Yep.
Thank you very much, sir. Good night. Bye.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Chair. Good night.
All the best.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Most grateful to you.
Thank you.
Bye.